Welcome to CRE Cafecito, the CCIM Miami podcast, where commercial real estate insights are served with a shot of Miami flavor. Hosted by CCIM's own Ruben Ruban, better known as Ruben the Cuban, this show brings you conversations with top professionals, CCIM fundamentals made simple, and the latest South Florida market moves. Each episode delivers practical nuggets of wisdom you can put to work right away in your commercial real estate business. Now, grab your cafecito and let's fuel success in commercial real estate.
Guerra. I was like, Guerra.
No.
Yeah,
War.
Guerra.
It's all about the war.
It's all about the war. All right. Hello, and welcome to another episode of CRE Cafecito. It's CCIM Miami District podcast, and today I am so happy to be here with the one, the only, the great warrior of CRE here in Miami, Daniel Guerra. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Ruben, happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Your podcast is outstanding. It gets such a great listenership, and I'm just honored to be here with you.
Well, thank you. And we're very happy you're part of our CCIM Miami District Board, and you do so many things, and I'm just really excited to dive into all these exciting things about your life and what's going on in Miami. But before we get started, I always like going back a little bit as people like to listen. They're like, who is Daniel? And where's Daniel? Let's go back to like high school or something like that. Tell me a little bit about Daniel in high school. Where'd you grow up and stuff like that?
Oh, going way back. Well, there might be some stories I can't tell, but I grew up in Miami, born and raised. My parents are Cuban. My ancestors are from Spain, and just made our whole life here in Miami, and mostly in construction development and real estate as a child with my family, and continued on in that business. In high school, I ran track and field. I was a pole vaulter, so that's a little unique.
Nice.
Yeah. It's interesting because my brother says, if I was ever told that the sport synonymous with our family would be pole vaulting, I would have never believed it. But we now have 3 in the family that jump.
So pole vaulting.
Yeah. So that's a fun part of my life. But, we definitely have taken that sports drive into our business world. And, we apply that every day, the competitiveness, the teamwork, working with others. And that's why I always say I don't see any realtor or any colleague as a competitor. It's a team member, and we're collaborators, working together to make things successful.
Awesome. So you've had that teamwork DNA from early on.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. So you go through and you grew up here. How'd you get into the commercial real estate?
So when I was 4 years old, I would walk buildings with my dad.
Oh,
and he was part of the design build team for 1221 Brickell, which was one of the, more advanced and, beautiful office towers delivered at a difficult time in Brickell. But I walked that building through its construction.
Wow.
So it's like, I guess you said, you used the word DNA earlier. I guess it's in my DNA, and it's ingrained because I actually tried to get out, and I guess I've been in long enough that they just pulled me back in.
Try to get out of the real estate. And so you grew up with your, going through that. So early on, you've always kind of known, hey, this is what you really like to do and get into it. Now, I've talked to a lot of people that have kind of grown up in the business. They've had different levels of experiences. Some of them, hit the floor running. Maybe I guess you got started working at age 4. But are there, getting in and working, kind of in the family business kind of thing, making that grow? How was that journey for you?
It was exciting. I started in the warehouse, kind of thing, doing inventory, and then, moved along through the different phases or steps. So the neat thing about my experience is that I don't just work the marketing and sales numbers. I actually know how these are built. And, I even studied construction in college. And so it's nice to be able to not only understand it from the different sides of the business, but also explain it to clients from the different sides of the business of what can be done, what can't be done, what was done well, what wasn't done well. We've even added or brought back, I should say, a owner's rep portion of our services, which I did a lot of that in my younger years, and was asked to revisit that for a special client, and I think we're looking to broaden it now.
How did you guys go from more of a, I don't know, on where the roots are, and then the path of growth, I guess is what I'm trying to get to.
So my father was one of the largest Hispanic-owned, if not the largest at one point, Hispanic-owned subcontractors in the state of Florida. And the focus was electrical contracting. And so did a lot there. Actually, at one point, I ran the company, which was an interesting experience in my early 20s, growing a company to 150 employees and being responsible for $80,000 to $100,000 a week payroll.
Wow.
It was different than going clubbing. It was, so, that brought a lot of early experiences, and it was great, and I've transferred all of that early learning into what we do today. So it continued to evolve, and now we've gotten more into the construction development side as opposed to the subcontracting side. And as you mentioned, my brother as well in the industry, we've taken some different paths. I represent a lot of developers more so than develop, where he is actually developing on his own and doing some great things. They just broke ground on a nearly $1 billion project in St. Petersburg, Florida. Nice. So they're doing a lot of things. They're going to be starting another phase of that soon. So it just continues to grow. It's a very large project. And, they focus a lot mostly in the multifamily environment or the mixed use world.
You're on several different boards and you have a lot of things. Everybody knows that you're very much in. So how about you explain to the audience and try to give us, this is your elevator pitch that you can tell the world of what you guys do.
Yeah, the elevator pitch part gets difficult because it's so diverse, and we do actually offer an array of services. But what happens is it's kind of almost client specific and mission specific. In some cases, we work from acquisition to strategy to stabilization and disposition. In others, we're only on the disposition side. And we create the strategy to do that. We represent a lot of condo developers. And so, the difference between, dealing with a condo commercial project or a standalone project is that you have to sell the first one and the last one. You can't just sell some of them. Yeah. Once you break Humpty Dumpty, you can't put them back together again. Yeah. And so, we have to create that strategy correctly and not false start from the get-go so that we can be successful. And not only for that client, but continue our relationships and our reputation for future clients. So we have the honor of representing some of the largest developers in the game. In fact, we're sitting here at Viceroy Brickell Residence, which is a Related project. Related happens to be our client, and we represent multiple buildings for them. And we're very focused on this one right now because we're delivering it. Well, actually, we're supposed to get the TCO, I believe, today. Nice. So that's a 498 unit, 45-story building in the heart of Brickell on the Brickell Avenue and the intersection of the Miami River. So, just an amazing location. Right. And so we need to build that story and then also bring in services aside from the building. So we deal with retail spaces within the buildings and around us to make sure that you have everything you want where you're going to live at your fingertips at the foot of the building. And so it's a long range vision, right? We don't do one building. We've actually developed several blocks here, and you have to be thinking ahead of what am I going to do next and what do I have to do here to make the next that much better.
Amazing. And as you said, we're here in your sales office. So we hear some of the background buzz. It's just things are hopping. Your phones are ringing, and you got the sales force here really busy. So
yeah, we are blessed. This is actually one of our larger sales teams, and everybody has back-to-back appointments today, and we're getting a lot of interest just because the building shows incredibly well. We're offering some amazing packages for the buyers, amazing benefits for the brokers, and so all of that put together with the location and the quality is making it one of the best opportunities offered right now, and the only one delivering in Brickell to date in the first quarter of 2026.
Wow. Awesome. Well, with that, you've been part of so many projects and deals. Hey, let's talk a couple of things, maybe one or two that come to mind that you would say, hey, these have been my favorite or least favorite, some lessons learned from some of those projects.
As developers and as developer reps, I always say we make markets. People look at comps a lot. We're the ones making comps. If we only focused on performing at what comparables are today, most of what we do wouldn't be buildable. So we have to actually create markets and tell that story of not only what Miami is today and what Brickell is today, but what it's going to be tomorrow. I remember when Brickell only had a couple restaurants, you know, and we were told that it would never be pedestrian, that nobody walks in Miami. And you look outside now and it's as busy on that sidewalk as it is in any other major city in the world. And it's only getting better. And so it goes back to bringing in the other elements of what's needed for life. It's not just a roof over your head, but you know, you need restaurants, you need, you know, entertainment, you need services like groceries, you need dry cleaners, barbers, and then schools. You know, early on in Brickell, every developer was scared to deliver a lot of 3-bedrooms because of the price point. The acquisition of that unit was so expensive, we didn't know how many buyers there would be. And then people started staying in Brickell and growing their families and now needed bigger units. And there weren't enough 3-bedrooms. Wow. So now we're finding that we're building bigger properties. You know, like we have Baccarat, which is also one of our projects on this same site here next door. And, you know, those units are very large and it's 98% sold because it didn't really matter that they were selling at $4 and $5 million. It was that they were big, they were quality. It's a great brand, a great location by a great developer like Related. And they said, we're gonna buy those right now. And so they sold very, very quickly. So some of my favorite experiences have been creating that story, that market, that difference where people didn't see the vision of why it was going to work, but we understood that it was a needed asset or a needed product. In Coral Gables, we created an interesting submarket where it's called Biltmore Square, where along with MG Developer and that developer, we created a story of why this little area was very different to the Coral Gables market and why we were going to bring realtors that had never sold in Coral Gables to have an interest in that market. And so we delivered very large, luxurious townhomes that at the time we started selling at $2.5 million. And people thought we were nuts. They had never been done. We were never going to be successful. And today, those same properties in that area we continued to build are selling at $4 and $5 million.
Wow. On a price per square foot, would you say that, I don't know, what would you say, ballpark?
Today in Coral Gables, and you know, I talk about, you know, Miami as submarkets, right? Like,
yes,
like
absolutely.
Coral Gables, Brickell, downtown, Doral, in other spaces are not the same market. You know, delivering a penthouse in Coconut Grove is different than delivering a penthouse in Brickell.
Yes, yes.
Or in Doral. And so, you know, we have a really diverse price per square foot in all of these different markets. And then it also matters whether it's a branded or not branded building. That changes things as well. Today here at Viceroy Brickell, we're selling at an average about $1,200 a square foot.
Wow.
So
okay.
which is actually for new construction, very nice.
Yes.
It's a great opportunity for somebody who's buying into the future and the change that's happening here with brands like Baccarat coming in, like Faena, like Mandarin Oriental, like St. Regis. You know, those are all of the neighbors that you're going to have, because next door we're selling at $2,500 a square foot at Baccarat. You know, in Mandarin we're at, you know, $25,000 to $3,000 a square foot. You know, so you're seeing a wide range of offerings. You know, anywhere from $1,000 a square foot to $5,000 a square foot throughout, you know, the Miami and the submarkets and, you know, Miami Beach and whatnot. But we're getting that wide, diverse buyer too. The migration of wealth that we're experiencing in Miami is something that's not happening in any other part of the country.
There's two things I loved what you said. First, the comps. I have land right now. We're going under contract. Comps are one thing, and people point to that, but you have to understand that even you might be in a certain area, but they're different markets. And so just because you say, oh, Miami's going through this, and oh, why should I pay $3,000 a square foot when over here is at $1,000 a square foot, $500 a square foot? It's not apples to apples, and it's not market demands for that product in that location. And the second thing is that you said is market maker. I'm gonna start calling you Danny the market maker, because that, I love his vision. It's like, hey, forget the.
Well, it's not me by myself, right? It's our colleagues together.
Yes,
we do it as a team, and that's why I go back and say I don't see my fellow colleagues that are maybe selling a different building or a building we don't represent as my competitor. We're all making that market together.
Right. I would say that there's an elite group that is helping drive the market, and that's part of what I think, the whole CCIM branding, and part of that is like, we earned that pin to be distinguished as an elite people in commercial real estate, for example. And in your business specifically, when you're selling these, these condo projects for these developers, I would say not everybody can command or push a market to make a market. So you're part of that elite group.
I appreciate it. That's very kind of you to say, and I didn't start it, and I won't be the one that finishes it, but it's great to be part of it, right? I remember when we took the first Brickell amenitized type buildings in Doral. Doral had never seen anything above 8 stories really, and we just started delivering 20-story buildings with amenities like you would expect in Miami Beach, in downtown, in Brickell, and we were selling at prices that had never been seen before. I mean, back in that date, we were selling at $500 and $600 a square foot in Doral, when originally, at that time the prices were, high 300s was a really big deal. Wow. But since there had never been a building with those services, and we had the pleasure of doing that with Armando Codina in downtown Doral. Mm-hmm. But again, it was bringing schools, it was bringing restaurants, it was bringing services, and creating a live, work, walk, play, learn environment where you had everything that you didn't have to leave the community. You didn't have to leave, those boundaries to be able to accomplish everything in your life.
Speaking of schools, I know this is maybe a side note. One thing I do hear from folks coming down from like New York or Chicago, that coming down with the looking for certain amenities in Miami. I keep hearing that Miami, as far as like the private schools and so forth, we're in need of more of some of those type of level of education or level of schools.
So absolutely, with the wealth migration and the movement of companies like Citadel and Microsoft and others, Amazon, that are all coming here, their employees and the workforce that they're bringing, have their families as well, and so they need places for them to go. And as we mentioned, the wealth migration, a lot of the executives that are coming with, like, for example, a Citadel or a Millennium, they are high income executives that are wanting to have private school educations and or charter school educations, or so our private schools have really filled up, and right now there's a need to expand those existing ones or deliver or bring in new private schools that will be able to help the market.
So with those private schools, like, if somebody's listening and say, hey, I know some private schools that like to get into the market, should I tell them to reach out to Daniel Guerra, or is there somebody else you would say that it's a good?
So interestingly enough, we have done some stuff with charter schools in Doral, in Coral Gables, and some other markets. Yeah, so we've had that experience, but we can definitely try to help them, guide them in the direction of what areas necessarily are in the need, as well as what is the way to go about it. We were approached by a charter school group from New York that's looking to expand into Florida, and they're currently exploring a few different sites.
Amazing. And I think with that way, we could pivot a little bit into, you've dipped into, obviously you're very well connected in the city. You mentioned of some of the bigger developers here that have been doing, basically reshaping the landscape of the skyline of Miami. But in addition to that, there's like any bigger city or growing city, there's a political side that obviously we need to work with as on the development and in the real estate, commercial real estate. So do you mind touching a little bit on some of those, your journey that you've had into, we got some background music now. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect for the political
So the presentations continue, as you can see, and
that's awesome.
That's actually a wonderful video that we have with the CEO of Highgate and the representing Viceroy and the brand, and so they it goes into a 4-minute explanation of what you're buying into, because it's not just the real estate, but the culture, the community. You're part of a bigger group when you're buying here, because you get discounts around the world at all of the different locations that the group has to offer. So it's a great situation. But going back to your question about my civic roles, and
civic, sorry, I would say civic.
I was brought up with the fact that you really need to always give back, right? And
yes.
from when I was little, whether it was working with migrant workers, food drives, doing things like that with either the church or my family, you always give back. And I'd say I've had a lot of help along the way. I've had my challenges. I've had my struggles, my moments in life where I needed somebody to give me a hand. And a lot of people have stepped up. A lot of family, colleagues, and others have come to help me. And so the reason that I serve so much is because I also want to continue to give back. So whether it's in a, city board, like a planning board or the design review board or environmental preservation board, which I've served on all of those, or whether it's, serving at the Miami Association of Realtors or Florida Realtors or National Association of Realtors, it's all about finding a way to give back and help others with their needs, whether that need is helping to complete a transaction or to change or guide a legislation in a direction where it will facilitate something for our colleagues or something for our community, because our advocacy that we do isn't only for our industry, but it's also for the citizens of Florida and the folks that live here. We often go and work on taxes, whether it's real estate taxes or the business rent tax that recently got eliminated in Florida.
Yeah.
That was a long process. It took a lot of effort and a lot of folks helped to get it done. And I was happy to just be a small part of that. Today we go to Washington, D.C., and we work on protecting the 1031 exchange. We're talking about seeing how we can increase the capital gains exemption that was set over 20 years ago. And it's, something that maybe is a bit outdated, limited to the small amount that it is today. So doing these things and giving back is fulfilling to me, but it's also a way of saying thank you for everyone that's helped me through my journey. And when I had my stumbles and I needed something, I want to be able to do that for others too.
Amazing. And if you don't mind, maybe that's something that with you, I've been learning more and more about, something that I think is near and dear to you, or you've been very involved with, is RPAC. It's almost this like mysterious thing for me when I first started hearing about RPAC. And I know some of the other folks may not be as familiar with RPAC.
So RPAC is a Realtor Political Action Committee, and it's important to state that just because it says political, it's not a partisan.
Yes.
And that is important. The mission of RPAC is to focus on the issues that are important to our industry, our members, and our community. So whether it's protecting homestead exemption or whether it's protecting getting legislation passed for squatters and commercial properties, those are all things that we work on, not as a partisan, but as a community. So nobody has to be concerned about if they're providing money to one party, one political party or another. If you're contributing to RPAC, you're contributing to our important issues, whether it's water quality, because let's face it, folks aren't coming to Florida to see our mountains. Mm-hmm. We need to protect our most important resource, which is our water. Whether it's working on, septic to sewer conversions, and seeing how we can help guide some of that. Or whether it's, like I said, working on tax issues. It is not a partisan process. And I've come to see that we get a lot done crossing the aisle. And we have an amazing team of lobbyists, whether it's in our Miami Association of Realtor, our Florida Realtors, and our National Association of Realtors, which I've had the pleasure of being a PAC trustee at every level, whether it was at the Miami Association, at the Florida Realtors, and at National Association of Realtors as of late. So I'm enjoying being really on the front line of helping guide that and then expanding it and carrying the story to other members that don't know of why it's so important to be part of this.
You have a lot going on.
I'm blessed. We as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, I come with a team spirit, with a competitive spirit, and it's all about team. I'm going to be able to do a fraction of this without having all the support from, for example, the sales team we have here at Viceroy Brickell Residence, the support that we have at Fortune Christie's International Real Estate, the support I have at home from my wife, my children. It's invaluable, and so we work together and we can get further.
Awesome. As we come into towards the end here, Miami, obviously you're very bullish on Miami, the future of Miami. Where do you see Miami kind of going in the next 10, 15 years, if in your crystal ball, as you're looking down, since you have such a very long view on what's happening here in South Florida and Miami?
So, Florida's an anomaly, and we really had a great situation when our former mayor, Francis Suarez, went out, started putting billboards out and making phone calls and tweets saying, "How can I help? We're open for business." And that resonated, during the pandemic. And we started seeing a migration of companies that started coming here. And, the number keeps growing, but I believe we have somewhere over, I think it's approaching 300 large companies that are making a transition to Miami and to Florida. But the value of that is that it's also bringing population. It's bringing economic growth. Our population has continuously grown over the years, and today we're at about 1,350 people moving to Florida per day.
1,350.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that population growth takes into account births, deaths, and all of that. But the point is that we're growing very rapidly.
Wow.
And that migration today is not just folks that are coming to retire or folks that are coming to live. There's very, very large wealth coming. And the companies that are coming are outstanding. And it's not just the ones that are coming, but the ones that are already here doubling down and expanding their footprint. So you have Microsoft, you have Amazon, you have Blackstone, you have Kirkland, Ellis, Citadel, Goldman Sachs, Millennium Group. There's just, and that's just to name a few. And they're coming from across the country. We have folks like Armando Ortega moving their headquarters from Spain to Miami. So it's not just countrywide, but it's worldwide.
Right.
Folks are coming here. FIFA, as you know, is about to get going. And Miami is an epicenter for it. We have the G20 that's going to happen in Miami this year. So then you pile on the regulars, right? The Formula One, the boat show, and all of the other things. We finally have a wonderful culture, with our performing arts center. We have one of the most advanced performing arts centers in the world is here in Miami. And that is just another feature that's bringing folks from around. But more interestingly, the reason I think Miami is unique to some of the other big financial capitals, right, is New York is known as a financial capital. You have Latin America as such an important economic force globally. You have Europe, which is not too far away, and the one that's kind of in the middle of all of it, the one that has the quickest access for all of it is Miami.
Wow. So
you have all these direct flights. I had the opportunity to go speak in Istanbul last year with the National Association of Realtors. We did an event with Tugem, our partner over there, and the Istanbul Chamber of Commerce. And it was interesting to see that we were one of the few cities in Miami that has 2 flights a day to Turkey, to Istanbul. And that tells you the economic importance.
Yes.
These airlines don't waste their time on creating flights that aren't going to work. So it's driven by the economic bridge that we have between Turkey and Florida. When you start digging into that, you see how many direct flights there are internationally to Miami. It's not just people coming to see Mickey Mouse.
Right.
People are investing. And in fact, one of our largest buying groups in this building and others is from Turkey.
Oh,
and it's great to see that diversity and that melting pot that we're having. So yeah, I mean, I could go on forever on this. We just saw a transaction here on Brickell of a little over 4 acres sold for $520 million. Yeah. Record-breaking numbers, but it's because we're going to continue to have record-breaking growth economically as well as population.
I've talked to folks, like I said, similar to you, and everybody's like, hasta cuándo? How much further? Miami was undervalued for a long time. So we've had this growth, and the runway is just pretty long ahead. So, keeping that bullish outlook on Miami is pretty amazing. You've had a lot of experience. You wear a lot of different hats in what you do. Some of our listeners are on the younger side and just getting started in their careers, or kind of trying to figure out commercial real estate overall. What would you say to like a younger Daniel or a younger person that looking to find their way in this immense industry, in this beautiful industry that we're in?
So I'm involved with a mentor-mentee program where I'm a mentor for some of the folks that are just getting started in the industry, or whether it's in construction or real estate. And I would say that it's get involved, is be around people who've been in it, listen a lot. Not just to your colleagues, but listen to buyers. You learn a lot with that, and get involved with serving. We going back to our advocacy process. We were talking a lot, you and I, a few months ago about live local and some of the changes that are happening there. Be part of it, because when you're on the front lines and you have the information, you can be more effective and you gain more credibility because your clients and your colleagues know that you are in the know.
Right.
And that's very important. And then work. Work ethic is everything. The time that you put in is what you're going to get back. None of this is easy. Yeah. But it's a lot of fun, and if you're enjoying it, putting in the time's not hard, and if you put in the time, you will get the reward.
Well, Daniel Guerra, que está en la guerra, front lines of this CRE war, but it's a good one. It's a good one. Love our industry. Thank you very much for giving us some of your very valuable and busy time. I really appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners will appreciate it. And look forward to working with you on the CCIM Miami District Board and some of the other areas, the Miami Association of Realtors and so forth, and with RPAC as well. Yeah. So if there's anything we could ever do for you or I could do for you, please always feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Ruben. You're amazing. Everything you do for the industry is outstanding. Your leadership at CCIM is invaluable. And I just thank you for having me be part of that board and being part of this podcast. And let's keep working together and together we'll get further.
Absolutely. Together we're better. There we go. Absolutely. All right, brother. Thank you very much. And until next time.
Thanks for joining us on CRE Cafecito, the CCIM Miami podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, subscribe, and share it with others in the commercial real estate community. Stay connected, stay inspired, and as always, keep fueling success in commercial real estate.